We're back.
We are really committed to shorter videos now, but it doesn't mean we're done talking. So we changed our clothes and our hair to make it look like it's a new day. But what was our topic?
I can't remember.
I remember.
Okay, good. I changed my clothes. It's like it's a new day, and I'm like, it's gone. It's goldfish time.
So, in the cytokine story, what we talked about is cytokines out of control, the cytokine storm. What happens when they just go off the rails because there is trouble, and the messengers are taking that seriously, but they're taking it so seriously they are no longer being helpful. Right?
Yes. Yep.
And when that message happens, when the cytokine storm happens, it just activates everything. It activates everything in a effect on the system that actually takes the whole body down. That's why it's so dangerous.
Yep.
But what we're also talking about is that the human body is this very intricate, interconnected, complex system. So one thing that can happen that can tip everything out of balance that seriously, but in fact, there's so many other things happen. So we wanted to talk about HIV.
That's right. Now I'm remembering what we were going to talk about. Okay, great.
And now the cat wants to join us too.
Hi, sweetie. Oh. Hello, darling. This is Gabby Cat.
Yeah, there she is.
Yeah, that's what she wanted. So, HIV.
HIV.
And its relationship to how there are certain things in HIV that are really beneficial to dealing with HIV, but that end up predisposing certain individuals towards other conditions, I think is where we were going with this, right?
Right.
Okay, can you remind, because you have the better
so let me start it in terms of I think the point that most has my attention right now is that how and why does a cytokine storm happen? This is a completely simplistic answer, but it's a high level of sensitivity. It's a high level of readiness to send out the, oh my goodness, there's a problem message, right? So it's a hypersensitivity that turns into trouble. But lest we dismiss our bodies too quickly, that hypersensitivity on a different day and with a different problem can be incredibly useful. So if we talk about ankylosing spondylitis, yes, the cytokines need, in a case like mine and and similar kinds of issues with it, blah, blah, blah. There's some regulation, there's help with regulating the cytokines that I need because they are hypersensitive, because they respond to the wrong things, they give messages about the wrong things, that kind of thing. But in my case with ankylosing spondylitis, the biggest problem in ankylosing spondylitis is an inflammatory response. It's not even considered anymore an autoimmune disease.
Oh, interesting.
It's an immune-mediated disease.
Okay.
And with the main problem being not that it's attacking the self, but that it is sending this message of inflammation, and the message goes out of control. And the inflammation grows. So it's a great example of, hey, there's this hypersensitivity, and the hypersensitivity's gone awry. But what is so interesting is that it's exactly that quality, as I understand it, that means that people with ankylosing spondylitis are here's what I don't know. I don't think they're less likely to get HIV, but they are more likely to fall into the category of being an elite controller. So if HIV, that virus, has entered the body, and this is actually true of maybe all viruses, but at least many viruses, a highly sensitive immune system and cytokine system like mine is actually super useful. So the elite controllers are the ones with HIV who can keep the virus suppressed without additional aids and without additional help, not aids.
Right, yeah, no additional aids for HIV. That's not what we're after.
So without additional tools and much longer. That's what the elite controller thing means. So I think what we were talking about after the last one is that we want to make the point that even the vulnerabilities in the immune system that can go awry need to be seen in context, because in another context they are just the right thing.
Absolutely. And that, to some extent, it kind of comes back to this theme that we have about, the more you know yourself, the more I know myself, the more I know my constitution, the more I know what supports my constitution, where I start to go wonky inside of my constitution, the better I am and the better equipped I am to negotiate and navigate challenges that come up. And the more I'm studying myself and what works for myself and what I know is supportive for myself, the better off I am when I receive new information about something new. Like right now with COVID, there are so many different, even inside of the legitimate scientific community, there's so many different things that they're looking at, and there's so many different models they're using. And so there's so much information out there that seems to contradict itself. And I think that, over the long run, it's going to be very context dependent. And so the better off I know that I'm going to respond to a challenge or situation by going stagnant, whereas you might go into a more inflammatory response, that actually means that we're going to address or approach a new challenge actually in completely different ways.
Right.
And back to the self-acceptance piece, the more I have the practice inside of my own body, the more I've developed my relationship with my own body, with my practices, that communication between my mind and body and emotions, the better off I am going to be able to discern the incoming information, what to do with it, and then be able to actually trust my own experience, rather than going into, that doesn't match this new report, and am I wrong, and maybe I should be doing something else. And then we go back to what we were talking about in the last video, where when I start to lose the cohesion inside of myself, that doesn't open me up to just COVID or whatever the newest thing is. It opens me up to all sorts of new opportunistic infections, whether it's an actual life form or a new meme or belief system or whatever.
Conspiracy theory or, right, any of it.
Exactly. So I think that that's such a great thing to bring up, that and it's such a great thing to point out that each of us is so different, and that changes the context. And we can even spread that out to the global system, where one size does not fit all. And it's not, a lot of it is genetics, a lot of it ends up being lifestyle choices, and at the same time trying to turn everyone that's concerned about COVID into, you're just overreacting. Well, truly, you actually might not be. If there's a deep sense of, when you hear about a new thing out there, if you're like, oh gosh, I feel really vulnerable, well, sure, do your work and make sure that you're not overreacting, and make sure that you're not, responding to inappropriate stimuli. But at the same time, you also may be picking up on your body's innate intelligence to say, ooh, hey, this thing, out of all of the plagues that we've had come up in the last 10 or 15 years, this is the one to pay attention to. And the more you do get that relationship with your body going, I feel like the more accurately you're able to interpret those messages, for sure.
Yeah, I hear two really great insights as I listen to you. One is this reinforcement that if you're looking for answers outside of yourself, you set yourself up for these messengers going awry. Mm-hmm. Because if the messengers can't calibrate internally who I am, what I am capable of, where I am vulnerable, if my whole system is somebody better tell me the answer, tell me what's going on, take care of me, then, honestly, there's no one that can do all of that. So then I'm already sending out an alarm. I need this and it's not happening. Uh-huh. And then you had an alarming situation on top of that. So the ability to go internally and know your own voice and know your own truth is so prophylactic.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I'm hearing in what you're saying, for those of us who share this language, the difference between Svaha and Shita Svaha, and I'll just mention them in that language, but let's talk about what it actually means. That, right, when we talk about the viruses, there is actual validated knowledge that is true. Viruses work by invading cells, taking over the genetic processes, the genetic codes, replicating themselves, right? That's going to be true in your body, in my body, any body a virus works in.
Exactly.
Different viruses will do that different ways. So the HIV as a virus and coronavirus and the flu, influenza, each of them are going to have some of their own, what cells do they like to invade, what, one of the things that's really terrible about HIV is that one of the things it attacks is the immune system cells itself. So that's part of what has the bigger impact of that. So anyway, there's factual validated knowledge about each virus and how it operates.
Right.
And then there's all of that knowledge, and then what does my body do with it? How is my body well versed and able to respond well? Where are my weaknesses? Where are my strengths? And that is my talents, skills, and abilities. That's what's specific for me as I come into contact with something that's true for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. And the more you know, so for yourself, knowing that you have ankylosing spondylosis, that you have the gene you actually do have the gene that is responsible for some of these elite controller effects that they see in HIV patients, that actually informs you about where you tend to be vulnerable and where you tend to have a little bit more immunity, and that can actually completely inform your prioritization for how you engage in a new situation. And not only that, but not just in a particular situation, when you're able to add in your actual system and how it works best, and then what your priorities are in life, because someone who's very performance oriented or an athlete is going to have very different priorities in how they support themselves and what they need than an academic. They're two different things.
Right.
So the more you get clear about, this is what my body's capable of and this is how it works, and these are the priorities that I have, it becomes such an awesome sorting mechanism for getting through the noise, because there's so many resources out there. There are so many things that work. There's so many paths to enlightenment. There's so many diets that work. But when you get really clear for yourself about what works and what my actual priorities are, then it becomes so much easier to figure out what out of the information that's coming at you is valid and appropriate, not because it's objectively true, but because it's actually going to work inside of you.
That's right. And I'm so struck as I listen to you that it's like you're translating a philosophy or an attitude and approach, or at that level, but you're also describing the immune system, right? That is what the immune system is doing. It's what are the priorities? What is important to me? What do I have to work with? Where have I already created the antibodies or the resources or the capacities to respond? Where don't I? What does that mean? Like, the immune system's doing all of what you just said all the time inside of us.
Exactly, yeah. And at that point, it would be appropriate for, if you know that you're more vulnerable to bacteriological infections, well, if there's a new bacteriological pneumonia that's rolling around, then you're going to have an entirely different level of vigilance.
That's right.
Around this than you would around a viral thing. Not that you're going to ignore the virus, but when that kind of rolls through everywhere else as well. So it can actually become a huge asset the more we know, to be able to calibrate the appropriateness of our response as well.
Yeah.
So thanks for sharing.
So, oh my, we're at 14 minutes again already.
So
we have
chatty.
so much more to say. Next time we switch, because your hair, there's all these beautiful facial expressions only I get to see.
I do I like the hiding behind the hair thing. And this side is not, it's not shaved yet. It's all shaggy. It's
you get to see what she's willing to show you.
There we go. Yeah, it'll change soon. I might even talk you into shaving my head.
Ooh.
We'll see.
Things to come.
Yep.
All right, so I'm not even going to turn off this yet because we have to see.
Well, I hope you guys join me in an apple a day keeps the doctor away.
And that one's healthy. You should have seen the last one she went into.
It was bad. It wasn't a worm, but it wasn't pretty.
See ya.